All right, so today's Whiteboard Wednesday is slightly unconventional. It was triggered by a post that I saw where somebody mentioned something about what they believe it takes to hire great, like elite talent specifically, I think is what they said. What it takes to hire elite talent. And they named three reasons. I think it was something about comp, and I can't remember the other two. Uh, and they were just like all such like minor things for people who are actually elite. And what I believe are the only two things that matter for like truly the best of the best, and I can explain more about this later, is one of two things. It's either other elite talent, which is the primary thing. This is like the must-have, and then over time it becomes ownership surface. So, like, how much of the company or the problem is the person responsible for, or do they directly own? And the reason is that almost every other variable, and I'll talk about this framework because this is actually the most important thing, but almost every other variable, anybody who is actually exceptional can easily obtain. So, or it's just standard. So, like high compensation, high equity, like all title, like all of these things are easy to obtain for somebody who is actually exceptional because all they need to do is go talk to 10 companies and they'll get it, right? It's like, and that's kind of an easy thing to do. It's really not that hard for anybody who's actually exceptional at their job. Okay, so enough about that, and that can be talked about separately. Why other elite talent and ownership surface is actually an important framework is because, look, in the very early days of a startup, for a startup to actually become successful, you have to hire people who are elite in some way. And it starts with like the co-founder, right? So uh, for me, actually, specifically, I actually went through a long process before Shreyas joined as my co-founder. And the I would say that it is really important, and this is like where you have both high ownership surface and like that person has to believe that the other people on the team are exceptional. Both of those things need to be true. And so for those like first two or three people, including your co-founder, both of those things are going to be true. So this is like the very early category. This is like the only time when like both of these things become true. Very quickly you move in over here, and it basically uh, you then have a curve, which I mean the curve actually looks more like this. But what ends up happening is like as you are growing, the number one thing you are trying to do is reduce your ownership surface. If you're elite, is reduce your ownership surface and just hire other people who are elite to run a specific component of the business, right? So, and that's how you attract the best people, right? So, for example, if you're a company that has an exceptional uh, like CMO, then you would advertise that person when you're trying to hire an exceptional VP of product or VP of eng or VP of sales or any other function, honestly, right? Or if you have, or like when we were talking to Steve to bring him on as VP of expansion, a big part of his decisioning was like, okay, I'm going to interact with other people who are actually exceptional. Like for most of the people who watch any of my content, they know Rabah, so it's like Rabah's exceptional. I'm going to be able to interact with him, and that's like a really great outcome. He has a belief that Shreyas and I are great at what we do, and so that's a part of the calculus that is exciting to him. If all he was trying to do was solve for something else, like one of these other variables, it would have been trivial for him to accomplish that at any other company, right? And so it's really important that like people who join at this growth phase, what ends up happening is they are optimizing for this over the ownership surface. As the company gets bigger though, and you start to have less confidence that other people on the team are elite, so you start to go down in confidence, your expectation of your ownership surface goes up. And this is happens all over the place. Um, this happened with me at a certain stage. I'm not saying that I'm elite, okay? I'm not trying to be hubristic about it, but I was good at what I was doing when I was at my prior employer. And the number one thing that I did in order to continue to stay motivated was continue to take on ownership from other parts of the company or from like peer organizations where I felt like those people were not good at it. And you will see this pattern over and over again at companies as they get bigger, is that your best people will continue to take ownership from the people who are not as effective. And so you will see departments change in what they own, sort of like in front of your eyes. And that's a very clear signal, actually, that there is a belief that the other people on the team are not elite. Because if they did believe that those other people were elite, they would allow them to keep that ownership surface and then just learn from each other, right? And so this is a big sort of like trade-off question or inflection that happens. And it's also a good thing to think about when you're hiring is if somebody is over optimizing for ownership surface, implicitly what is happening is like they have some sort of view that the other talent on the team is not as strong as they are. And that's why they're optimizing for ownership surface over optimizing for other people on the team being elite, right? So it's like the Spurs during their great dynasty, for those of you who know basketball, had exceptional position players, and everybody on the team was elite. Um, and it turns out a single player cannot do it, right? Cannot actually build an exceptional team. And so it's actually like a very similar framing, and nor do exceptional players want for the entire burden to be on them, usually, right? They know that they need other great players. And so this sort of like trade and balance is something to keep an eye out for, both in hiring and as your company grows and your team grows. I know this one was like a little bit longer than usual. I hope it was helpful in how you think about managing and orchestrating your team and hiring people into your team. I'll see you on the next one.